The sky over Varelia had long lost its color. Once it had been a brilliant shade of emerald, with swirling clouds that reflected the light of 3 suns. Now it was a dull gray streaked with black smoke and ash. Cities that had once touched the clouds were nothing but jagged ruins, their towers shattered, their streets filled with debris. The air smelled of metal and dust, sharp and acrid, biting at the throat and lungs of anyone who dared breathe it. Lyra stood at the edge of Shattered Ridge, a cliff so high that the ground below seemed like nothing more than a distant memory. Her long hair, silver and luminous even under the pale light, whipped in the wind. Her hands, delicate but calloused from scavenging, clutched the edge of the rock. She stared down at the black void, the abyss that seemed to stretch forever, and felt a strange sense of calm. It had been months since the war ended. The final bombardment had come quickly, leaving nothing but ashes and sorrow in its wake. Lyra had lost everyone she loved, her family, her friends, the people who had once guided her in life. And though some survivors remained scattered across the ruins, most had either fled to other planets or succumbed to sickness, starvation, and despair. She was alone, truly alone. Her heart ached, heavy with grief, anger, and hopelessness. She could feel the emptiness in her chest growing, a hollow space that no sound, no warmth could fill. She had walked through the streets of her city, seen the twisted metal of homes and the skeletal remains of structures she had once called familiar. Each step reminded her of the life she had lost, of the laughter and music that would never return. And so on this cold, gray day, she had made a decision. There was no future left for her. No one would miss her. No one could save her now. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the bitter air, and listened to the wind howl past her ears. The wind seemed to whisper the same thing her mind had been repeating for days. It is over. You are alone. There is nothing left. She opened her eyes and looked down at the abyss below. A gust of wind lifted her hair, and she felt a strange sense of weightlessness, as if the world itself had stopped holding her back. Lyra could already imagine the fall, the cold air rushing past her and the silence that would follow. She bent forward slightly, ready to let go, when a sudden sound stopped her. A faint, crackling voice came from her communicator wristband, the only piece of technology she had managed to keep functional. Don't do it. Lyra froze. Her eyes widened. That voice, it sounded human. Impossible. No humans had been near Varelia for months, maybe even years. Her first thought was that it was a trick. Perhaps the storms had scrambled signals, or her mind was playing tricks on her. Who is this? She asked cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm human, the voice replied, weak but urgent. My name is... Evan, please don't let this end here. You're not alone. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. A human alive. Out here? She glanced around, half expecting someone to appear from the ruins, but there was only wind, ash, and silence. She swallowed hard, unsure whether to trust the voice. Why should I care if someone is alive? She said bitterly. Everything I loved is gone. Everything I hoped for is gone. No one is coming for me. There was a long pause on the other end. Then the voice came again, calmer this time, almost gentle. Because even if the world has forgotten you, I haven't. You matter. I know you feel lost, but I promise, your life still matters. The words hit her unexpectedly. Lyra's fingers tightened around the edge of the cliff. She had never heard someone speak to her like that. Not the leaders of her people, not the neighbors who had fled, not even the elders who had once guided her. The voice carried something she had not felt in months. Hope. Lyra stepped back slightly from the edge, her mind racing. The voice continued, now steadier, more confident. I don't know exactly where you are, but I can help. I can guide you to safety. You just have to trust me, just for a little while. Trust. That word had no meaning to her anymore. She had been betrayed, abandoned, left to survive alone, and yet there was something in the tone, in the way the human spoke, that made her pause. She had been so focused on the emptiness of life that she had forgotten that even the smallest connection could matter. What do you want from me? She asked cautiously, her voice shaking. Nothing. I just want you to live, Evan replied. To find your way again. You're stronger than you know. You just can't see it yet. Lyra shook her head, trying to push away the unfamiliar warmth rising in her chest. She had no right to hope. She had no right to believe anyone would come for her. And yet she didn't want to fall. Not yet. Not when there was even the tiniest chance someone cared. She took a deep breath and whispered, almost to herself. Maybe I could try. Good, Evan said, relief audible in his voice. That's all I ask, just try. Just take one step forward. That's enough for now. For the first time in weeks, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. She stepped away from the cliff, letting the wind brush past her without fear. The abyss below no longer seemed like the only path. Over the next few days, Lyra and Evan continued to communicate through the damaged communicator. The signal was weak, often cutting out, but the human's words were constant, a lifeline in the endless gray of her world. He spoke of his own struggles, of being stranded on a damaged rescue craft orbiting the planet, surviving on limited resources. He didn't pity her. He shared his own fears and weaknesses, making her feel less alone. Lyra, in turn, began to share small pieces of herself. She told him about the ruins she scavenged, the old labs she had explored, the tiny victories she achieved just to survive another day. Evan listened without judgment, offering guidance and encouragement. Slowly, Lyra began to see that maybe survival wasn't just about existing, it could be about finding a reason to live. One evening, as a storm raged across the plains below, Lyra sat in a ruined dome, her communicator resting on her lap. She had scavenged parts all day, trying to fix a power generator so she could keep the signal alive. Her fingers were raw, her body exhausted, but she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. Evan's voice came through, crackling but clear. "You're doing great, Lyra. I know it's hard. I know it feels like the world has forgotten you. But every time you keep going, every time you don't give up, you remind me why we fight. You remind me why life matters." Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. She had not cried in weeks, not since the war ended. She wanted to tell him that, but words failed her. Instead, she whispered into the communicator, I'll try. I'll keep going." And for the first time in months, she believed him. The storm outside pounded against the broken walls, lightning flashing across the sky. But inside the ruined dome, Lyra felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. She wasn't alone. Not really. Not anymore. The days that followed were difficult, but they were no longer empty. Lyra scavenged, repaired, and explored, all the while guided by Evan's voice. She laughed at his jokes, learned from his instructions, and slowly began to see a world beyond the ruins, a world where hope was not yet dead. And each night, as she rested under the gray, ash-filled sky, she would look at the horizon and whisper, "Thank you, Evan, for reminding me I can still matter." Lyra did not know what the future would hold. She did not know if she would ever see another human in person, or if she would ever leave Virelia alive. But she did know one thing. The edge of despair had lost its power over her. A single voice, patient, kind, and unwavering, had changed everything, and for now, that was enough. The wind howled across the ruined plains of Virelia, carrying ash and dust that stung Lyra's skin. She had stopped at the edge of a collapsed bridge, staring down at the cracked surface below. Every day brought new dangers, from radiation pockets to unstable ruins that could collapse at any moment. But she did not feel the same emptiness she once had. Somewhere deep inside, a small spark of hope burned, and it was all because of a voice she could barely believe was real. "Lyra, are you there?" Evan's voice crackled through the communicator. "I'm here," she replied, clutching the device close to her chest. I don't know how much longer I can keep scavenging. There's barely anything left." "You've done more than anyone else out here," Evan said softly. "And you've survived alone. That's something to be proud of. You're stronger than you realize." Lyra smiled faintly. His words always carried a calm certainty, as if he had seen the worst of the universe and still believed life was worth fighting for. It was strange to hear such confidence from someone who was supposed to be human, fragile, mortal, and probably far away from her. "Tell me, how are you still alive?" she asked, curiosity mixing with disbelief. "I was part of a rescue mission," Evan explained. "We were supposed to help your people after the war, bring supplies and evacuate those who needed it. But our ship, it was damaged in an accident. I've been stranded on a small orbital craft ever since. I don't have much food or power, but I do have this communicator. That's how I found you." Lyra listened intently, her eyes scanning the ruined horizon. It was impossible to imagine another human out here, surviving alone, yet his voice was warm and real. "You've been here all this time?" Evan chuckled softly. "Not exactly here. I'm above Virelia, floating in the orbit, But the signal reaches parts of the planet. When I picked up your communicator's faint signal, I knew I had to try. Lyra felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. A human had found her, yes, but could she trust him? Her species had been betrayed so many times before, and she had learned not to believe in easy hope. Yet, something in the sound of his voice, the steady rhythm of his words, made her want to listen, made her want to believe. I don't know if I can, she began, her voice trailing off. You can, Evan interrupted gently. I know it's hard. I know it feels like the world has forgotten you, but if you take even one step forward, that's enough. I'll guide you. I'll help you survive. Lyra bit her lip. The wind whipped her hair into her face, and for a moment, she imagined the old despair creeping back, but she refused to let it win. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. For now. Over the next few days, Lyra followed Evan's instructions, scavenging parts and resources from the ruins. He guided her on how to repair her communicator, how to purify small water pockets, and even how to construct a basic shelter using the rubble around her. Each time she completed a task, Evan's voice came through praising her effort, reminding her that she was not alone. You're doing great, he said one morning as she adjusted a makeshift solar panel on the roof of a ruined tower. I know it's hard, but every day you survive, every day you take care of yourself, you're proving something. You matter, Lyra, you really do. Lyra felt a warmth she had not felt in months. She looked out over the city ruins, her eyes tracing the broken streets and toppled towers. I never thought I would hear that again. That someone thinks I matter, she said quietly. You matter more than you know, Evan replied. I can't be there in person, not yet, but I will be. And until then, you have to trust yourself. Trust your instincts. You've survived this long. You can survive more. For the first time, Lyra started to believe him. She found herself looking forward to the moments when his voice would come through, even if only for a few minutes before the static swallowed it again. She began speaking to him about small things, stories from her past, memories of her family, even the simple routines she followed to stay alive. In return, Evan shared his own experiences, his humor, and even his fears. You know, Evan said one day, his voice soft but amused. I've been trying to imagine what Virelia looked like before all this chaos. Did your people really have floating gardens and libraries full of knowledge? Lyra smiled faintly, remembering the days before the war. Yes, and much more. There were parks that glowed at night, water that sparkled even in the dark, and laughter, so much laughter. But it's all gone now. It's not all gone, Evan replied gently. You're still here and you're still part of that world. Maybe you can bring some of it back, even in small ways. Lyra shook her head, feeling the weight of the ruins pressing against her chest. I don't know if I can. There's so much destruction. I feel like nothing I do will change anything. Even the smallest actions can matter, Evan said firmly. Every time you fix a machine, every time you find clean water, every time you keep yourself alive, you're proving that life matters. And that's how change begins. Those words sank deep into Lyra's heart. She had been living day to day, barely surviving, feeling like nothing could make a difference. But Evan's encouragement was different. It didn't come from orders or expectations. It came from belief. He believed she mattered, even when she did not believe it herself. Days turned into weeks. Lyra's skills grew stronger. She learned to find pockets of clean water, to repair broken machines, and to navigate the dangerous ruins with care. Each success brought a small spark of pride, and with it a stronger connection to Evan, who cheered her on from the safety of his orbiting craft. You're improving every day, he said one evening as the gray clouds stretched across the horizon. I knew you were strong, but seeing it, it's inspiring. I wish I could be there with you, not just in voice. Lyra laughed softly, a sound that felt strange but good. I never thought I would hear that from a human, she admitted. You make it feel like I can survive anything. You can, Evan said simply, and soon I'll help you get to a place where you can be safe. But for now, we keep moving, step by step. One morning, as Lyra scavenged through a collapsed library, she found a small terminal that still had a faint charge. With Evan's guidance, she managed to connect it to her communicator, boosting the signal and allowing them to speak more clearly. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. For the first time, she felt a sense of teamwork. Two beings, human and alien, working together to survive a broken world. You did it, Evan exclaimed, his voice full of excitement. You're amazing, Lyra. That terminal will help us communicate better. We can plan more, survive better. I'm proud of you. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest that she could not explain. I'm proud too, she admitted. Proud that I can do something, that I'm not alone anymore. You'll never be alone again, Evan said. I promise. That night, Lyra sat on the roof of the ruined library watching the dim light of Virelia's twin moons reflect off the cracked buildings. She held the communicator close, listening to Evan's soft voice. He spoke of his plans, of ways to repair more of the equipment scattered across the ruins, and of small things to keep her safe. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. I never thought I would want to live again, she whispered to herself. But maybe I do. Maybe I want to see the sun rise again. Maybe. I want to see someone else alive, someone who believes in me. Evan's voice came through just then, as if answering her unspoken thoughts. You don't have to face this world alone, Lyra. Not ever again. We'll get through this. Together. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling tears prick at the corners. She had been so close to giving up, to letting the darkness take her, but now she had a reason to keep going. A reason that had nothing to do with duty, nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with hope. The spark that Evan had lit in her heart began to grow. It was fragile, delicate, but it was alive, and as long as it burned, Lyra knew she would survive. She would not let the world's ruins define her. She would not let despair claim her. Not now. Not ever. And in the distance beyond the ash-filled plains and shattered towers, Lyra began to imagine a future, one where she could walk under a bright sky again, where she could rebuild, where she could live for herself and for others. A future where she was not just a survivor but a force of hope. For the first time in months, Lyra felt something she thought she had lost forever. Purpose. The sun barely peeked through the heavy gray clouds of Virelia as Lyra stepped out of the ruined library. Her body ached from weeks of scavenging, and her hands were raw from handling sharp metal and jagged debris. But for the first time, she felt a strange energy pulsing through her veins, a mixture of determination, hope, and a growing connection to the voice that had saved her life. Evan, the signal from her communicator, had grown stronger over the last few days, and she now knew where to go. A small orbital craft had detected her life signs and could guide her to a safer location. But to reach him, she would have to cross the glass plains, a deadly stretch of shattered terrain filled with unstable ruins, radiation pockets, and sudden storms that could kill without warning. Every survivor who tried that path either never returned or was found broken and lost. Lyra stared at the plains, the gray horizon stretching endlessly before her. The wind whipped her silver hair across her face, and she could taste the metallic ash in her mouth. The fear she had felt for months returned in waves, threatening to freeze her in place. But then Evan's voice came through her communicator, calm and unwavering. Lyra, I know it looks impossible. I know it feels dangerous. But I believe you can do this. Step by step. That's all you need to survive. She swallowed hard, gripping the straps of her worn backpack. She had a few water packets, a small energy pack, and the tools she had scavenged to keep her communicator alive. It was not much, but it was enough if she stayed careful. I'll try, she whispered, taking her first step into the unknown. The glass plains were more terrifying than she had imagined. The ground cracked beneath her feet and clouds of sharp dust swirled around her ankles. Some ruins collapsed under her weight, forcing her to leap across gaps and climb jagged steel beams. Radiation zones glowed faintly green, their invisible touch burning her lungs when she accidentally walked too close. Every movement demanded focus, and every misstep could mean death. Hours passed. Lyra's muscles screamed, her energy packs dwindled, and the gray light of the sky offered no warmth. She stumbled, fell, and climbed again, guided only by Evan's directions and the faint signal of her communicator. His voice became a lifeline, a tether to sanity and hope. Lyra watched the ground ahead. Evan shouted through static as she stepped onto a cracked bridge. There's a fissure. Move to the left. She jumped just in time, rolling onto a safer patch of ruins. Heart pounding, she laughed breathlessly. You're keeping me alive, she said, panting. That's my job, Evan replied, humor in his voice. Someone has to make sure you don't end up as just another story in the glass plains. Despite the danger, Lyra found herself smiling at his words. Each step forward felt like a small victory. She remembered the days before the war, when her people had built towers and gardens that stretched toward the sky. Those memories gave her strength, reminding her that life could be beautiful even in broken places. But the glass plains were relentless. A sudden gust of wind lifted dust into her eyes, blinding her momentarily. She coughed and squinted, trying to find the path. The ruins around her creaked ominously, and a sharp crack echoed as a section of metal collapsed nearby. Panic surged through her, but Evan's voice cut through the chaos. "You're stronger than this," he said. "Keep going. You're almost there. Don't give up now." Lyra bit back fear, steadying her breath. She remembered his words from the first day he spoke to her. Even the smallest actions can matter. Right now, the smallest action was survival. One step, one breath, one careful movement at a time. Hours became a blur of careful navigation, exhaustion, and focus. Lyra's communicator beeped intermittently, giving her tiny boosts of hope whenever Evan's voice came through clearly. He guided her around radiation pockets, advised her on which unstable structures she could climb, and even warned her of falling debris. His constant presence, though only through sound, gave her courage she never thought she could feel again. As she neared the center of the glass plains, the storms began. Lightning danced across the gray sky, striking ruins and sending showers of sparks into the ground. The wind howled, carrying with it shards of metal and dust that cut at her skin. Lyra huddled behind a collapsed tower, shivering as the storm raged around her. Her energy packs were nearly empty, and she feared she might collapse before reaching safety. "Lyra, can you hear me?" Evan's voice broke through the storm, clearer than before. "You're almost there. Keep moving toward the signal. Don't stop!" She closed her eyes for a moment, letting his words sink in. Then she pushed herself forward, crawling through debris, climbing over jagged beams, and leaping across broken platforms. The storm's fury was relentless, but the thought of finally seeing Evan, of finally finding someone who believed in her, drove her onward. Finally, exhausted, battered, and nearly broken, Lyra spotted a faint light in the distance. Her communicator's signal had never been stronger. Evan's voice, though faint, called out, "Lyra! I see you." Her heart leapt. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the pain in her legs and the burn in her lungs. Every step brought her closer to the faint figure she could just make out through the dust and lightning. And then as the storm reached its peak, she stumbled, her body collapsing to the ground. I can't." "Go on," she whispered, tears mixing with the ash on her face. "Yes, you can." Evan shouted, urgency in his voice. "Look up, I'm right here." "You're not alone." Lyra lifted her eyes, squinting through the storm. A small drone hovered above, scanning her with a faint green light. And behind it, she saw a human figure, moving steadily toward her, shielding himself as best he could from the storm. His helmet was cracked, his suit battered, but he was real. He was there. He was alive. "Evan," she breathed, disbelief and relief washing over her. "Lyra, I told you I'd be here," he shouted. "Just hold on. Don't give up." With the last of her strength, Lyra crawled toward him, each movement burning her muscles, each breath rasping against the ash-filled air. And then finally she felt hands, human hands lifting her up, holding her steady against the storm. "You made it," Evan said, his voice a mixture of relief and amazement. "You're here. You're safe now." Lyra's knees buckled and he held her tightly, steadying her as the storm whipped around them. She gasped for air, tears streaming down her face mixing with dust and sweat. For the first time in months she felt a sense of safety, a warmth she had almost forgotten. I thought I wouldn't make it," she whispered, voice trembling. "You did," Evan said firmly, "because you're stronger than you know. And because you never gave up, not once." The storm began to fade slowly, leaving the plains eerily quiet except for the soft whistle of the wind through broken structures. Lyra leaned against Evan, feeling exhaustion and relief wash over her. She had crossed the deadliest part of her world, survived impossible obstacles, and reached someone who believed in her when she had given up on herself. I can't believe you kept guiding me all this time," she said quietly. I never thought someone could care that much." Evan smiled, brushing ash from his helmet. "I care because I believe in you, and because you matter. I promised I wouldn't let you be alone, and I never break my promises." Lyra closed her eyes, letting herself rest in the moment. For the first time since the war ended, she felt hope not as a fragile spark, but as a steady flame. She realized that she had survived not just for herself, but because someone had reminded her that life could still be meaningful. And as she sat there, leaning against the human who had saved her from the abyss. She knew one thing with certainty: she would survive. She would not let the ruins of her world, nor the despair she had carried for months, define her. She had a purpose now, and it was stronger than any fear, stronger than any storm. Lyra looked up at Evan, her voice soft but steady. "Thank you for not letting me give up. You did all the work," he said gently. "I just reminded you what you already had inside. You found your strength. You saved yourself." The two of them sat in the fading storm, watching the desolate landscape, yet feeling something they had not felt in months: hope. And though Varelia was broken, and though dangers still lay ahead, Lyra knew that with Evan by her side, even if only in voice for now, she could face whatever came next. For the first time in a long time, she believed the future could be bright. The storm over the glass plains had passed, leaving the ruined landscape glimmering with wet ash and shards of shattered metal. Lyra leaned against Evan, still trembling from exhaustion and relief. Her legs shook as she stood, but the sight of him, alive, real human, gave her courage she hadn't known she possessed. The communicator in her hand, though damaged, still crackled faintly, the link between them a lifeline that had brought her here. Evan helped her navigate the last stretch of the plains to a small bunker, partially intact amid the ruins. It had once served as a research station, but now it offered shelter from the harsh winds and the dangerous ruins that still loomed around them. Inside, the walls were cold and covered in soot, and puddles from the storm reflected the dim light filtering through broken panels. It wasn't much, but it was safe for now. "You made it," Evan said again, his voice both relieved and proud. "I didn't think I'd see you looking so strong after all this." Lyra managed a weak smile, brushing ash from her face. I made it because you didn't give up on me," she admitted. "Even when I almost gave up on myself." Evan shook his head, smiling gently. "No, Lyra. You made it because you found your own strength. I only reminded you that it was there. I can't do the work for you. You did everything yourself." For a long moment they sat in silence, listening to the wind outside. Lyra's mind was spinning, memories of her dangerous journey clashing with relief, gratitude, and a strange, unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She had survived storms, broken ruins, and near-death encounters, all because a human's voice had refused to let her surrender. "Evan," she said finally, her voice trembling, I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been there. I almost gave up." "I know," he replied quietly. "But you didn't, and that's what matters. You chose to live, Lyra. You chose to keep fighting even when the world seemed to have forgotten you." Lyra's eyes fell to the floor, her hands clenching the communicator. She remembered the first day she had thought of ending her life at Shattered Ridge, the wind howling around her, the emptiness in her chest. It had felt like the world itself was against her, and yet here she was, alive, standing, and not alone. The hours passed slowly, with the two of them taking small actions to make the bunker livable. Evan guided her to use debris to block gaps in the walls, fashion makeshift bedding, and purify small pockets of water. Each small success filled Lyra with confidence and determination. The fear she had carried for months was no longer paralyzing. It had been replaced with a quiet, steady resolve. "You're doing amazing," Evan said, inspecting the improvised shelter. "Soon we'll have enough stability here to rest properly, and then we can start thinking about reaching the main rescue craft." Lyra nodded, her heart lifting. The thought of leaving the ruins, of seeing other humans and possibly other survivors, filled her with hope. It was a feeling she hadn't known for months, a sense that life could still be meaningful, that she could still make a difference. As evening approached, the light filtering through the broken panels of the bunker turned a soft orange, casting long shadows on the walls. Lyra sat on the makeshift bedding, exhausted but alert. Evan leaned nearby, checking the communicator's systems and repairing minor damages. "I never thought I'd see another human again," Lyra admitted, her voice low. I almost believed that life had nothing left for me." "You almost believed in despair," Evan said softly, "but you chose not to stay there. That choice, that courage, that's what saved you." "You saved yourself, Lyra." She blinked, tears welling in her eyes. "No, you helped me. You gave me the reason to try." Evan smiled, a warmth in his eyes. "Sometimes all it takes is one voice to remind someone they matter. You just listened. And you acted. That's what makes all the difference. Lyra's chest tightened as she realized the truth in his words. She had been ready to end her life, to surrender to the emptiness and despair, but a single voice, patient and unwavering, had reminded her that even in a broken world, hope could exist. That reminder had given her the strength to survive. As night fell over the ruins, Lyra and Evan settled into the bunker, their bodies sore but hearts lighter. The storm had left the plains eerily quiet, the only sound the faint whisper of the wind outside and the soft hum of the communicator. They spoke quietly, sharing stories of the past, memories of their worlds and small plans for the future. You know, Evan said thoughtfully, I never imagined I'd be guiding a Varelian through this world. And yet, here we are, against all odds. Lyra laughed softly, a sound that felt strange but freeing. I never imagined I'd trust a human again, and yet, here I am. The two of them shared a moment of quiet understanding, the weight of months of loneliness and despair lifting slightly. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt the world was not entirely against her. She was alive, she was capable, and she was not alone. Over the next few days, they worked together to stabilize the bunker and prepare for the journey to the rescue craft. Lyra scavenged materials, repaired damaged equipment, and learned more about human technology from Evan. Every day brought small victories, and each victory strengthened her resolve. You're incredible, Evan said one evening as Lyra successfully rerouted a power circuit to the communicator. I've never seen someone adapt so quickly. You've survived months on your own, and now you're mastering systems that would take most people years to understand. Lyra smiled, feeling pride swell in her chest. I've had good guidance, she said softly. I had someone who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That's true, Evan said, his voice gentle. But you acted. You took that belief and turned it into strength. You didn't just survive, you thrived. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. They shared meals, stories, and even small jokes, finding comfort in each other's company. Lyra realized that trust, once broken so many times in her life, could be rebuilt. She began to see a future where humans and Varelians could work together again, where hope could rise from the ruins of despair. One morning, as they prepared to test the repaired communicator for a long-range signal, Lyra paused and looked at Evan. Do you think anyone will respond? She asked, uncertainty in her voice. Evan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I don't know, he admitted honestly. But we have to try. And no matter what happens, we face it together. You've come this far. You're stronger than any odds. Lyra nodded, feeling a sense of determination settle over her. She had crossed deadly plains, survived storms and broken ruins, and faced the darkest parts of herself. And now, with Evan by her side, she was ready to face whatever came next. As the long-range signal finally powered up, the communicator hummed steadily, broadcasting their presence to orbit. They waited together in tense silence, listening for any sign of response. And then, faint at first, a reply came, a voice from the rescue craft above confirming that they had detected the signal. Lyra's heart leapt. We did it, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. We reached them. Yes, Evan said softly, a smile breaking across his face. And now, you can see that life is worth fighting for. You've shown courage, strength, and hope. You've survived when so many would have given up. And that's something no one can take from you. Lyra looked around the ruined plains, at the broken buildings and ash-covered streets. The world was still damaged, still scarred by war and despair. But she no longer saw it as a prison. She saw it as a place where hope could grow, where life could be rebuilt, and where she could make a difference. Turning to Evan, she whispered, Your words, they saved me. You reminded me that I can still matter, that I can survive. Evan shook his head, his eyes soft. No, Lyra, you saved yourself. I only reminded you of what was already inside. That strength, that courage, that spark, it's all yours. You chose life. You chose hope. And that's the most powerful thing of all. For the first time since the war had ended, Lyra smiled freely, feeling the warmth of hope fill her chest. The ruins of Varelia no longer seemed endless and hopeless. With Evan's support, she had learned that even in the darkest times, a single voice of belief could ignite change, could restore courage, and could save a life. As night fell over the plains, Lyra and Evan sat together in the bunker, looking out at the faint glow of distant stars. They had survived the storm, survived the ruins, and survived despair. And in that moment they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Lyra whispered softly, a promise more to herself than anyone else. "I will live. I will rebuild, and I will make sure this world and all the lives in it have hope again." Evan nodded, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "And I'll be with you every step of the way. You're not alone anymore. Never again." Together they looked out at the horizon, the twin moons of Virelia rising gently above the ruined plains. The world was broken, but it was not defeated. And neither were they. For Lyra, for Evan, and for the future of Virelia, life had begun again.